I was sipping a glass of Chateau Margaux 2015, admiring how the crystal chandelier scattered light across the ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton. The annual Tech Visionaries Gala was in full swing, a gathering of Silicon Valley's elite, where the price of admission could feed a small village for a year. My black Givenchy gown had cost 3 months' salary, but in this world of venture capital and tech royalty, appearances were currency. My name is Claire Monroe. At 35, I was the youngest director of product strategy at Halbert & Shaw, one of the fastest-growing AI integration firms in the country. I'd spent 6 years climbing that corporate ladder, sacrificing weekends, relationships, and occasionally, my sanity. But standing there, watching CEOs and investors mingle over champagne that cost more than my first car, I believed I had finally arrived. My phone vibrated in my clutch, probably another congratulatory message about the Westbrook acquisition, a deal I had architected over 18 grueling months. And the reason our CEO, Meredith Langford, had been invited to speak at tonight's gala. I excused myself from a conversation with our lead developer and checked the notification. It was from Meredith. "We need fresh talent. Your position has been terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you to collect your belongings on Monday." I read it 3 times. My fingers suddenly numb against the screen. The dessert I'd just enjoyed, a delicate chocolate mousse with gold leaf, turned to ash in my mouth. Across the room, I spotted Meredith, resplendent in a red Valentino, laughing with a group of investors. She caught my eye for the briefest moment before deliberately turning away. 6 years. 6 years of 80-hour weeks, of canceled vacations and missed family events. 6 years of being the first to arrive and the last to leave. All ended with a text message during dessert. "You look like someone just told you the market crashed." The voice came from behind me, deep, amused, with just a hint of a Boston accent. I didn't need to turn to know who it was. Vincent Cade, CEO of Iron Veil Systems, our biggest competitor and Meredith's personal nemesis since they'd been classmates at Stanford. "Mr. Cade?" I said, schooling my features into professional neutrality as I turned to face him. "I didn't realize you were on the guest list." He smiled, the lines around his eyes crinkling. At 53, Vincent Cade still cut an impressive figure in his tailored Tom Ford tuxedo. "I made a last-minute donation. Cancer research is close to my heart." He tilted his head, studying me with unsettling intensity. "But you haven't answered my question, Ms. Monroe." I considered lying, considered maintaining the facade, but something in me snapped. "I was just informed that my services are no longer required at Halbert & Shaw," via text message, during the chocolate mousse. To his credit, Vincent didn't offer immediate platitudes. Instead, he nodded thoughtfully, taking a sip of his scotch. Meredith always did have impeccable timing. "She learned from the best," I replied, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. Everyone in the industry knew the story of how Vincent had fired his entire R&D department on Christmas Eve 10 years ago. He laughed, genuinely amused. "Touché." He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a business card. Not the standard corporate card with the Iron Veil logo, but a simple black card with nothing but a phone number embossed in silver. "Call this number tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. I think we should talk." I took the card, more out of reflex than interest. "Mr. Cade, if you're offering me a job out of pity—" "I've never done anything out of pity in my life, Ms. Monroe." His eyes hardened slightly. "And I don't poach talent unless they're exceptional. Your Westbrook integration strategy was illuminating. I recognize the architecture of your thinking." He glanced across the room at Meredith, who was now being photographed with the mayor. "Besides, I suspect you might have some valuable insights about Halbert & Shaw's upcoming Vision Edge platform." Before I could respond, he finished his scotch and set the glass on a passing waiter's tray. 8 a.m. Don't be late." And with that, he disappeared into the crowd, leaving me holding his card and feeling the first stirrings of something beyond shock and humiliation. It was anger. Cold, calculating anger. I spent the next hour circulating through the gala as if nothing had happened, exchanging pleasantries and business cards, discussing market trends and upcoming innovations. Not once did I glance in Meredith's direction. Not once did I let my smile slip. Years in corporate America had taught me one essential skill: how to bleed internally while maintaining perfect composure. As I waited for the valet to bring my car, I pulled out my phone and reread Meredith's message. "We need fresh talent," the royal we, as if it had been a board decision rather than her personal vendetta. I knew exactly why she'd fired me. 3 weeks ago, during the executive retreat, I'd corrected her analysis of our market penetration in front of the board. It had been a minor correction, a 3% discrepancy in our Eastern Seaboard numbers, but in Meredith's world, public contradiction was unforgivable. That wasn't all. The Westbrook deal had put me in the spotlight. The industry press had started referring to me as the strategic genius behind Halbert and Shaw's meteoric rise. Meredith couldn't stand anyone else getting credit, even when it was deserved, especially when it was deserved. I drove home in silence, the lights of San Francisco blurring through unshed tears. Not tears of sadness, I'd never cry over Meredith Langford, but tears of rage, of indignation. My apartment felt emptier than usual, the sleek minimalist furnishings suddenly seeming sterile rather than sophisticated. I kicked off my heels and poured myself a generous glass of bourbon. Then I opened my laptop and began to plan. By 3 a.m., I had mapped out every vulnerability in Halbert and Shaw's business structure, every weakness in their integration protocols, every flaw in the Vision Edge AI system they were betting the company on. I knew these because I had identified most of them months ago, had written memos warning about them, memos that Meredith had dismissed as unnecessarily cautious. I set my alarm for 7 a.m. and fell into a dreamless sleep. Vincent Cade's black card on my nightstand. The next morning, I called the number precisely at 8 a.m. It was answered on the first ring. "Helix Division, how may I direct your call?" The voice was female, crisp, professional. "This is Claire Monroe. Vincent Cade asked me to call." "One moment, Miss Monroe." There was no hold music, just silence. Then, Vincent's voice. "Claire, I'm glad you called." "What's Helix Division? It's not listed as a subsidiary of Iron Veil." He chuckled. "Direct. I appreciate that. Helix isn't a subsidiary. It's more of a strategic initiative. I'd prefer to discuss it in person. Can you be at the Fairmont in an hour, suite 1503? "I'll be there." The Fairmont was one of San Francisco's oldest luxury hotels, perched atop Nob Hill with panoramic views of the city. Suite 1503 turned out to be one of the tower suites, with floor-to-ceiling windows and elegant Art Deco furnishings. Vincent was waiting, dressed in casual slacks and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. "Coffee," he offered, gesturing to a silver service on the dining table. "Black, thank you." I remained standing, dressed in a charcoal gray suit that was my armor of choice for difficult meetings. "Mr. Cade." "Vincent, please." "Vincent, I appreciate the invitation, but I'd like to know why I'm here." He poured 2 cups of coffee and motioned for me to sit. "You're here because Meredith Langford made a catastrophic mistake last night." He handed me a cup. "And because I believe in capitalizing on my competitors' errors." I took a sip of the coffee, a rich, complex Ethiopian blend. "So this is about poaching talent to hurt Halbert and Shaw?" "No," he sat across from me. "This is about something much more comprehensive." He placed a tablet on the table between us and slid it toward me. "Helix Division was formed 3 years ago with a specific purpose to identify vulnerable companies and systematically dismantle them from within." I stared at him. "You're talking about corporate sabotage." "I prefer to think of it as accelerated market correction." He gestured to the tablet. "Everything we do is perfectly legal. We simply identify companies with fatal flaws in their structure, strategy, or leadership, and then we apply pressure. The right press release at the right time, the right investment withdrawn at the right moment, the right personnel placed in the right positions." I picked up the tablet. It displayed a list of companies, all of which had gone through spectacular collapses or been acquired at fire sale prices in the last 3 years. Scrolling through, I recognized the patterns. These weren't random failures. They were executions. "And now you want to add Halbert and Shaw to this list?" It wasn't a question. Vincent leaned back. The company was already vulnerable. Meredith has been making increasingly erratic decisions. The Vision Edge platform is fundamentally flawed. And now she's fired the one person who might have saved them from their own hubris. He studied me over the rim of his coffee cup. I'm not offering you a job, Claire. I'm offering you a scalpel. I set the tablet down, my mind racing. What exactly would my role be? You would work with the Helix team to identify the most efficient way to accelerate Halbert and Shaw's inevitable decline. In return, you'd receive a generous consulting fee and a guaranteed executive position at Ironvale once the dust settles. I should have been appalled. I should have walked out. But all I could see was Meredith's dismissive text message, the culmination of years of taking credit for my work, of undermining me in subtle ways, of ensuring I remained useful but never threatening. What's the timeline? I asked. Vincent smiled. It was the smile of a predator who knows the prey has nowhere to run. How does Monday sound? The Helix division turned out to be a team of 12 people, operating from an unmarked floor in a nondescript building in the financial district. They were a mix of former executives, data analysts, legal experts, and PR specialists. All were brilliant. All had been burned by corporate politics. All were utterly ruthless. The team lead was a former hedge fund manager named Diana Chen, who had the demeanor of a university professor and the tactical mind of a military strategist. Claire, she greeted me, extending a hand. Vincent speaks highly of your strategic capabilities. We've analyzed your work on the Westbrook integration. Impressive. Thank you, I replied, taking in the space-open concept, minimalist, with multiple screens displaying data flows and news feeds. Vincent mentioned a Monday timeline. That seems ambitious. Diana smiled thinly. We've been monitoring Halbert and Shaw for some time. The foundation is already laid. Your insight is the final piece we need. She gestured to a glass-walled conference room. Shall we? Inside, the team had assembled a comprehensive analysis of Halbert and Shaw's vulnerabilities. They knew about the data integrity issues with Vision Edge. They knew about the technical debt in the legacy systems. They even knew about the tension between Meredith and the board. What they didn't know, what no one outside the company knew, was my ace in the hole. This is all valid, I said, reviewing their analysis. But there's something else, something that could make this much faster and cleaner. Diana raised an eyebrow. We're listening. I pulled out my personal laptop and connected to their secure server. 18 months ago, when I was designing the integration framework for our enterprise clients, I created a unified system called Clear Bridge. It's essentially the nervous system connecting all of Halbert and Shaw's client interfaces. I pulled up the code architecture. Within the master agreement, I included a specific intellectual property clause, Section 12, Paragraph 7, Line 4. I highlighted it on screen. It states that while the implementation belongs to Halbert and Shaw, the core algorithmic framework remains my intellectual property unless accompanied by a separate assignment agreement. The room went silent. Did Meredith sign this? Diana asked. Not only did she sign it, she praised it as elegant and comprehensive, and distributed it as the template for all future integrations. And the separate assignment agreement. I smiled for the first time since the gala. It was supposed to be part of my year-end review package, which was scheduled for next week. Diana's eyes widened slightly, the equivalent of a gasp from someone like her. So you own the architecture that their entire client base depends on? Precisely. And as of last night, I'm no longer bound by any non-compete clauses in my employment contract. Vincent, who had been silently observing from the doorway, began to laugh. Claire, I believe you've just shortened our timeline considerably. Over the next 48 hours, we constructed what Diana called a cascading pressure strategy. The first phase began that afternoon, with a seemingly innocuous industry blog post questioning the data verification protocols in next-generation AI platforms. No companies were named, but anyone in the field would recognize the thinly veiled reference to Vision Edge's methodologies. By Saturday morning, 3 more articles had appeared in more mainstream tech publications, each building on the last, each more specific about the potential risks. Halbert and Shaw wasn't mentioned by name until the 3rd article, and even then only as one of several companies racing to market without adequate safeguards. I knew exactly how Meredith would react. She would dismiss the concerns, double down on the aggressive timeline, and alienate the more cautious board members in the process. She was pathologically incapable of admitting potential weaknesses in her strategy. Sure enough, by Saturday afternoon, Halbert and Shaw had issued a defiant press release reaffirming the launch date for Vision Edge and dismissing the unfounded concerns of industry Luddites. The statement had Meredith's fingerprints all over it, arrogant, dismissive, and completely tone-deaf to the growing anxiety among institutional investors. Phase 2 began Saturday evening, using my administrator credentials, which inexplicably still worked. A testament to Halbert and Shaw's abysmal security protocols, I extracted documentation proving that I was indeed the creator of the Clear Bridge framework. Then I had our legal team draft a cease and desist letter, informing Halbert and Shaw that they were in violation of my intellectual property rights. The letter was delivered by courier to Meredith's home address at 8 p.m. Saturday night. I knew she would be there. Saturday evenings were sacred to her, the only time she allowed herself to completely disconnect from work. I imagined her opening the envelope in her kitchen, perhaps with a glass of her favorite Sancerre in hand, her face transitioning from annoyance to disbelief to panic. By Sunday morning, the tech press had caught wind of the IP dispute. The story was spreading, amplified by a series of anonymous sources, courtesy of Helix's media contacts, expressing concern about Halbert and Shaw's fundamental infrastructure. The company's stock, which had already dipped 4% following the data integrity questions, dropped another 7% in pre-market trading. Meredith would be getting frantic calls from board members by now. She would be promising them that everything was under control, that this was just a disgruntled ex-employee making baseless claims. But the claims weren't baseless, and she knew it. I had the documentation, the code history, and most importantly, the signed agreements acknowledging my ownership of the core architecture. Sunday afternoon, Phase 3 began. Vincent Cade publicly announced that Iron Veil Systems was exploring acquisition opportunities in the enterprise AI integration space. He didn't mention Halbert and Shaw specifically, but the timing left little doubt about his target. By Sunday evening, my phone was ringing constantly. Calls from former colleagues, from industry analysts, from recruiters sensing blood in the water. I ignored them all, focusing instead on the final preparations for Monday morning. The board of Halbert and Shaw called an emergency meeting for 7 a.m. Monday. I knew because Diana's team had a source on the board, a minor shareholder who had been systematically excluded from Meredith's inner circle and was eager for a change in leadership. At 6:55 a.m., I walked into Iron Veil's headquarters, where Vincent had arranged for us to use the executive boardroom. The Helix team was already assembled, monitoring news feeds and financial data streams. Diana handed me a cup of coffee and a tablet displaying Halbert and Shaw's stock price, which had plunged another 12% in pre-market trading. "They're panicking," she said simply. At exactly 7:30 a.m., my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but I knew who it would be. "Claire Monroe," I answered, putting the call on speaker. "Claire," Meredith's voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the underlying desperation. "We need to talk." I believe my attorney made our position quite clear. "Meredith, this is ridiculous. You developed Clear Bridge while employed by Halbert and Shaw, using company resources. It belongs to the company. The courts might disagree, given the explicit language in the agreement you signed, but I'm sure you'd prefer not to test that theory in a lengthy, public legal battle." I kept my voice even, professional, especially with Vision Edge's launch on the horizon. There was a pause. Then, "What do you want?" "I want what's mine." "A settlement fine. Name your price." I looked around the room at the Helix team, at Vincent, who was watching me with that predatory smile. "I don't want money. Meredith, I want control." "What are you talking about?" "In exactly 15 minutes, Iron Veil Systems will announce a strategic acquisition of Halbert and Shaw's Enterprise Integration Division, including all rights to the Clear Bridge framework. The deal will value the division at approximately 60% of your current market cap, which, given this morning's trading, is actually quite generous." Silence. "You can't do this," she finally said, but her voice had lost its edge. "The board is voting on it right now. Your board, Meredith, the same board that's watching your company's value evaporate because you fired the person who built your most valuable asset." I allowed myself a small smile. The same board that's reviewing the termination text you sent me at a public event, in violation of at least 3 HR protocols. This is about Vincent Cade, isn't it? He's using you to get to me? No, Meredith. This is about you using me for 6 years and then discarding me when I became inconvenient. Vincent is simply a businessman recognizing an opportunity. Another long pause. I could almost hear her mind racing, searching for a way out, for leverage, for anything. I'll see you in court, she finally said, her voice cold. No, you won't, I replied, because in about 3 minutes, your general counsel is going to inform you that fighting this would trigger an automatic review of all your client contracts, most of which contain clauses requiring stable ownership of the integration platform. If those clients even suspect that their data architecture is compromised, they'll invoke their emergency termination clauses. Halbert and Shaw would be bankrupt before the first hearing. The line went silent for so long I thought she might have hung up. Then, barely audible, "You've thought of everything. That's why you hired me. Remember my exceptional strategic foresight? Your words. From my last performance review. What happens to me in this scenario? For the first time, I felt a twinge of something like pity, but it passed quickly. You'll be offered a generous separation package, contingent upon a comprehensive non-disparagement agreement. Your equity will be honored at Friday's closing price, before any of this began. You'll walk away wealthy, but you won't work in this industry again." The boardroom door opened, and an assistant handed Vincent a note. He read it and nodded to me. "The board has approved the acquisition, Meredith," I said. "It's over." The line went dead. At 8 a.m. precisely, Ironvale Systems announced the acquisition. By 8:05, Halbert and Shaw's stock had stabilized, then begun to climb as the market processed the news. By 9 a.m., analysts were praising the move as strategic genius on Vincent's part. By noon, Meredith's resignation had been announced, along with my appointment as Executive Vice President of the newly formed Ironvale Integration Division. I spent the day in meetings, reassuring key clients, addressing staff concerns, and beginning the integration planning. It was nearly 8 p.m. when I finally had a moment alone in what would be my new office, a corner suite with views of the Bay Bridge, 47 floors above the city. Vincent found me there, staring out at the lights of the city as they flickered on against the deepening dusk. "Satisfied?" he asked, pouring 2 glasses of champagne from a bottle that had been chilling on my new desk. I accepted the glass but didn't drink. "Do you know what's strange? I don't feel anything, not vindication, not satisfaction, not even relief." I turned to face him. "Just empty." He nodded, unsurprised. The aftermath of revenge often is. That's why most people don't have the stomach for it. He sipped his champagne. But the emptiness passes, and then you build something new. "Is that what you did after Stanford?" A shadow crossed his face. Something old. Something never quite healed. Meredith took something from me back then. Something I couldn't get back. So I built something she could never take. He gestured to the building around us, to the empire he'd created. That's the real victory, Claire. Not destroying your enemies, but creating something they can't touch. I finally tasted the champagne. It was exquisite, of course. "Is that why you wanted me to hurt Meredith?" "Initially, perhaps, but I recognized something in you at that gala. The same thing I saw in the mirror 30 years ago." He set his glass down. "Talent without conscience is dangerous. Talent without loyalty is lethal. And you think I'm loyal to you now?" He laughed. "God, no. You're loyal to yourself, as you should be. But our interests align, at least for now." He moved toward the door. "The Helix division is yours, if you want it. Or you can disband it and focus solely on building the integration business. Your choice." After he left, I remained at the window, watching the fog roll in beneath the Golden Gate Bridge. In the reflection of the glass, I could see my office larger than my entire apartment, with sleek modern furniture and art that had been selected to match my personal aesthetic, a throne built on the ruins of my former kingdom. Meredith had made a fundamental error in her assessment of me. She'd seen me as a tool, something to be used and discarded. But I wasn't a tool. I was an architect, and now I would rebuild the entire structure. I pulled out my phone and typed a message to Diana. "Meeting tomorrow, 7 a.m. Topic: Restructuring Helix. Then I turned away from the view and opened my laptop. I had work to do. Meredith Langford had fired me at a gala on Friday night, thinking she was removing an inconvenience. By Monday morning, I had made her entire company obsolete. But that was just the beginning, because while revenge might leave you empty, creation fills you up, and I was just getting started. Kikemas. I've been at Ironvale for 6 months now. The integration of the former Halberd and Shaw division proceeded more smoothly than anyone expected, even Vincent. Within the first quarter, we had not only retained all major clients, but expanded our market share by an additional 8%. The ClearBridge framework, now enhanced and rebranded as Ironvale Nexus, has become the industry standard for enterprise AI integration. Meredith has disappeared from public view. According to my sources, she purchased a small vineyard in Sonoma and has withdrawn from the tech world entirely. Sometimes I wonder if she's found peace there, among the vines and the seasonal rhythms so different from the relentless pace of Silicon Valley. I doubt it. People like Meredith don't change their nature. They just find new territories to conquer. The Helix division continues to operate, but with a different mandate. Instead of identifying companies to dismantle, we now identify struggling firms with valuable intellectual assets. Companies that could thrive with the right leadership and resources. We acquire them, restructure them, and integrate their innovations into our expanding ecosystem. It's less dramatic than corporate execution, but ultimately more profitable and, I've found, more satisfying. Vincent and I have developed a complex working relationship. He respects my territory, never interfering with the integration division or Helix operations, but I'm acutely aware that I serve at his pleasure. So far, our interests remain aligned. When that changes, and eventually, it will, I'll be prepared. My new office has slowly become personalized. Gone are the generic modern art pieces, replaced with works by emerging artists I've discovered during my increasingly rare free time. The sleek, uncomfortable furniture has given way to pieces selected for both aesthetics and comfort. I spend too many hours here to sacrifice functionality for appearance. Today is Friday, exactly 6 months since that fateful gala. I've cleared my calendar for the afternoon, sent my team home early with praise for a successful quarter, and poured myself a glass of bourbon, the same brand I drank the night Meredith fired me. On my desk sits a small black box that arrived by courier this morning. Inside was a single grape, slightly withered, and a handwritten note. Harvests are unpredictable, M. It's the first communication I've had from her since the acquisition. A threat, a peace offering, a simple acknowledgement. It doesn't matter. I've already instructed security to increase surveillance protocols and had my team run comprehensive system checks. If Meredith is planning some form of retaliation, she'll find I'm not as easily blindsided as she was. My phone rings Vincent's private line. "I assume you received a delivery today," he says without preamble when I answer. A grape and a cryptic note, hardly worth the courier fee. She sent one to every member of the board as well. Different messages, same melodramatic fruit delivery. I lean back in my chair, swirling the bourbon in my glass. And how did the board react? With amusement. Mostly, Meredith has become something of a cautionary tale in the industry. The board sees her gestures as the last gasps of a deposed queen. And you? What do you see? There's a pause. Then Vincent says, "I see someone who has nothing left to lose. Those are always the most dangerous opponents." After we hang up, I stare at the withered grape. Vincent isn't wrong. Meredith with nothing to lose could indeed be dangerous. But she's operating with outdated intelligence, fighting the last war. In the 6 months since her downfall, I've rebuilt our security architecture from the ground up, diversified our client base, and created redundancies in all critical systems. If she's planning to use my own tactics against me, she'll find there are no convenient structural weaknesses to exploit. Still, complacency is the first step toward vulnerability. I make a note to accelerate our contingency planning and to initiate a comprehensive review of all former Halberd and Shaw employees who might still harbor loyalty to Meredith. As twilight settles over the city, I find myself drawn once again to the window. The lights of San Francisco spread out below me, a constellation of ambitions and dreams and schemes. Somewhere in that glittering expanse, Meredith is plotting, nursing her wounds and her rage. Let her come. I'll be ready. My phone chimes with a calendar alert. Quarterly board presentation 3 weeks. It's time to shift focus from the past to the future. I have a vision for Ironvale that extends far beyond mere revenge or market dominance. I want to build something that will outlast both Meredith's grudge and Vincent's empire. I discard the grape and the note in the trash and return to my desk. There's a proposal I've been developing in private. A new architecture that would not just integrate AI systems, but fundamentally transform how they evolve and learn. I've kept it separate from Ironvale's servers, stored on an air-gapped system in my home office. Not out of distrust for Vincent, precisely, but out of a hard-learned caution about intellectual ownership. This new system, I've named it Chimera, could represent the next evolutionary leap in enterprise AI. The question is whether to develop it within Ironvale or to strike out on my own. Vincent would provide resources and market access. But at the cost of control, independence would mean starting from scratch, fighting for every client, every investor dollar. 6 months ago, the choice would have been clear. Stay within the safety of a corporate structure, build incrementally, avoid risk. But Meredith's betrayal and my subsequent rise have changed my calculus. I've seen how quickly fortunes can reverse, how fragile corporate power can be when confronted with the right leverage. My desk phone buzzes the security desk. Ms. Monroe, there's a package for you. Another courier delivery. No, ma'am, it was delivered by drone. It's been scanned and cleared. Curious. Send it up. 5 minutes later, a security officer delivers a small metallic cube to my office. There's no note, no identifying marks, just a seamless silver cube, roughly 3 inches on each side, with a slight heft to it. I examine it carefully, turning it over in my hands. One face has an almost imperceptible seam. I press it gently, and the cube unfolds with mechanical precision, revealing a holographic projector that activates automatically. A 3-dimensional blueprint appears above my desk complex, intricate, beautiful in its architecture. It takes me a moment to recognize what I'm seeing. It's a system diagram for Vision Edge, the platform Meredith had been developing before her downfall. Except this isn't the flawed version I'd helped dismantle. This is something new, something elegant and innovative. At the bottom of the projection, a message appears. Some visions transcend their creators. V.C. Not Meredith, Vincent. I study the diagram more closely. It's brilliant work incorporating elements of my clear bridge architecture, but extending them in directions I hadn't considered. The implications are immediately clear. Vincent has been developing his own version of Vision Edge, using the intellectual foundation Meredith abandoned and elements of my own design. I'm not sure whether to be flattered or concerned. Is this a gesture of trust, a demonstration of capability, a subtle reminder that he, too, can appropriate and transform the work of others? I close the cube, cutting off the projection, and secure it in my office safe. Then I send a text to Vincent. Impressive engineering. We should discuss licensing terms. His reply comes moments later. Dinner tomorrow. The French Laundry. 8 p.m. We have much to discuss. I confirm the appointment and return to my own work, but my concentration is broken. Vincent's cube has disrupted my careful planning. If he's already developed a next-generation platform that incorporates elements of my work, how does that impact my Chimera project? Are we collaborators or competitors, allies or future adversaries? The lines blur in this world. 6 months ago, I was Meredith's trusted lieutenant. Then I became her executioner. Now I serve Vincent. But for how long? Until our interests diverge. Until one of us sees an advantage in betraying the other. The realization settles over me like a shroud. This is the life I've chosen. Not just the corner office and the executive title, but the constant vigilance, the strategic positioning, the chess game that never ends. In dismantling Meredith, I didn't just exact revenge. I stepped into a particular kind of existence where trust is a tactical vulnerability and loyalty extends only as far as mutual benefit. I pour another bourbon and return to the window. The fog has thickened, obscuring the lower floors of the surrounding buildings so that only their uppermost lights pierce the grayness. It's an apt metaphor for the world I inhabit now, a place of limited visibility, where only those who rise high enough can see clearly. Tomorrow I'll meet Vincent at the French Laundry. We'll eat exquisite food, drink exceptional wine, and circle each other with words that mean both more and less than they appear to. I'll learn what he wants from me, what he's offering, what he's threatening, and I'll calculate my response accordingly. But tonight, in this moment of unexpected clarity, I allow myself to acknowledge what I've become, neither hero nor villain, but something more complex and perhaps more honest, an architect of systems both technological and human, designing structures that serve my vision of the world.